Hey everybody, welcome back to Digital Artcast. Another episode here, rounding out. And this one is particularly special to me and the audience because I know you guys have been asking to have this episode for a long time, and I've managed to arrange it. A few back and forward episodes, obviously, because the person I'm trying to interview is always so busy, of course, because he's pretty much running an empire just now. Today, we are talking to the amazing and talented Mr. Marc Brunet. Hey, Marc, how's it going?
Hey, what's up, man? Thanks for having me.
Hey, yeah, of course, man. Hey. So scheduling and technicalities aside, I finally got you here.
Yeah, it's been a while. So props to you for not giving up because you did reach out to me a lot, and thanks for that I'm here today. So yeah, thanks for insisting.
Yeah, man. And definitely. And this is, for me, I think this is probably one of the biggest interviews I've conducted probably since I spoke to Scott Robertson a couple of months back. Probably,
Scott's probably way more important. So, but I appreciate it.
I don't know if Scott would say that, but yeah, no, definitely. There's a couple of people in my list of art heroes, and you're definitely one of them, Marc. I'm sorry to be fanboying out on you, but yeah, man, of course. So again, the thing we usually do in interviews is introduce you and talk about your career. I can't understand if anybody's listening, they wouldn't know already who you are or what you do. But I mean, the bulk of your career has been Blizzard since you were quite young. So maybe just touch on that briefly, kind of how you got into the company, the things you done while you were there, and then obviously your initial leaving. Is it, how many years ago now? Is it 4 years ago?
It's been 3? A little over 2 years.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so it's still quite recent. Yeah, so go for it, Marc. Let the people know who you are.
All right. Well, so how I got started at Blizzard. So I mean, my love for Blizzard always, it started with Warcraft. So that's one of the first games that I played when I was a kid. I don't know how old I was back then, maybe around 8-10 years old, and I had been playing with computers for a while. I was lucky enough that my dad, for his work, he had a laptop provided to him. So as soon as I was probably 5 or 6 years old, I was playing with his his work laptop. And just loving it. So there's always been the drawing part, of course, and I've been just like pretty much every other artist. I've been drawing since I was a kid. I've always drawn, in school and class and all this stuff. And then the love for the computer also kind of came in when I was younger. So anyways, I got into video games, and some of those were Warcraft 2 and Diablo. And so that's really when I started to really dig video games. Those are my favorite games. And I would look at the little booklets and all the arts that was in it by Medzen and Samwise. And really that's kind of what my inspiration was at the beginning. So moving on from there. I mean, I just kept on drawing, just went through high school normally. And when I was in college, when it was a time to actually, start to think about a career, I really had no idea what I wanted to do. And so the counselor at our high school actually suggested that I go into computer engineering if I wanted to do video games. So that was the best kind of guideline that I had at the time, which was, very bad. But that's kind of what I rolled with. My parents didn't know anything about that world, and nobody else really knew. So it was kind of new. And so, I studied to go into science, and then I went to science in college, and I hated it. So, I focused a lot more on the art. I kind of dropped out, and I've been painting. From that point, I had been painting for in Photoshop for a long time, and by just posting my stuff online, adding more and more pieces to my portfolios, I was seeing some progress there. each piece was getting a little bit more attention, and that was mostly on DeviantArt, but on a bunch of other forums as well. And all that attention, at some point, somebody saw it, I guess, and one of the art director for a company in Montreal, where I'm from originally, in Canada, they reached out, and they're like, "Hey, we've seen your portfolio on DeviantArt, and want to check if you're interested in taking an art test for concept artist position." So at that time, sounds cool, and of course, it's more the interesting part, I guess, is that I was never planning to go in video games, so that was never my thing. I was painting, doing a couple side gigs here and there with relating to that. But I was just kind of seeing where this would all take me, and then the turn for video games really came with that offer. I had really never thought about it, but that sounded cool. So I'm like, hey, I love video games. I love drawing. Hell, why not? That's kind of perfect. So I just rolled with it, and it worked out. So I got the job, and 2 years later, same thing. I was while I was working there, I was still working a lot on my personal stuff. Again, keep on updating my portfolio, and then the same thing happened, but with Blizzard at that time. So. Wow. They reached out to me, and they're like, "Hey, we've seen your stuff on DeviantArt again." So, God damn. So yeah, at that time it was more like a really, really kind of far-fetched dream, to ever worked in the United States, because I had no degree, nothing. I was a dropout, and so when that offer came in, it was a little bit surreal, and it was kind of a dream that was impossible, that suddenly maybe had an option to actually become reality. And then so I did the art test, went through the whole process, and they accepted me. So I started on the Titan team, which was in its very they were just starting. Essentially, I was the second character artist on the team, and so I spent the bulk of my career at Blizzard on Titan / Overwatch. And so after those 5 years, some stuff happened internally, and decided to change direction with the game, which is which eventually became Overwatch. Yeah. But from there I moved on teams, and I started working on StarCraft. So I moved on to Team 1 essentially, and Team 1 was at the time StarCraft and Heroes of the Storm. That was kind of just starting, and so I worked on StarCraft a little bit, and then the rest of my career at Blizzard for the other 3 years was really working on Heroes of the Storm, and then
cool. Wow, and that's a big legacy to have worked on Titan, because I only know from an outside perspective, obviously, but I did watch the documentary that GameSpot done on when they talked to Jeff and Chris about how Titan formed, and how eventually it kind of failed, and then they kind of were humbled by that, and then they moved on to Overwatch. So you were there for that whole thing, which must have been an interesting time, because your first project, technically your first project at Blizzard didn't actually get lit. So that would have been an interesting experience.
And that's not even. It's more like at that point, all the work that I had been doing in Montreal, prior to my job at Blizzard, was always on game pitches, like game demos. So it was a really small team, and we were trying to come up with new ideas, testing, like essentially making like one level games, a bunch of different ones, to see which one the company would kind of like and perhaps develop, but that never happened. So for my entire career, up to 7 years into my career, I had never shipped a game. And then you had this thing. 5 years later, I've worked pretty much the bulk of my career on this project, and then they reset it. And of course, I won't ever be able to show anything that I've done in those 5 years. So it's more like, man, it's been 7 years in the industry, never shipped a title.
Jesus are you kidding Christ. Me? Yeah, so it seems like a totally interesting story, and obviously I was even just watching the GDC talk with Arnold Sang and Billy the other day about their process on Overwatch, and just a super talented team, especially with the art side of it. It definitely was a lot of exploration, but it's actually great. I love the fact that they were able to turn that around into what is now obviously one of the biggest games in the world. But it would have been an interesting time to be there. And then of course you went to StarCraft, which obviously has its own legacy. And then of course, like you said, just over 2 years ago, you decided to leave the company. because you wanted to focus on your own internal
Yeah.
thing that you were running at the time, which was QBrush. So yeah, just the thinking behind that and how that got started, was that something that was always in the back of your mind? Was that because mostly of you weren't shipping something, or was that something you wanted to make that was physically in the world that was finished? Or
Yeah, I mean it's a good question. So the how the idea for the company started, it really started small. So it was mostly at the beginning. It was kind of a chain of events, right, that led to what it is right now. But essentially, at the beginning, I think it was towards the end of my time on the Overwatch team, or the Titan team. I had been working there for 5 years. So I guess for most people, if you work 3 to 4 years in a company at any, given position, unless you switch it up like a lot, you jump positions a lot. But for most people, about 3 to 4 years is the usual range for you to start kind of plateauing, like to be a little bit bored of the routine. And that was kind of that for me as well, like maybe 4.5, 5 years into it. So maybe a little bit later than most people, just because the team was awesome, the project was awesome. But when towards the end, it was more something that I wanted to explore for myself, do something else outside of the routine. And I started a YouTube channel. So that's really where it started. And then I started a YouTube channel, just making tutorials, and I got a good response. So I kept making more and more and more. And the only reason that I switched to a website from there was to essentially make it a little bit more easy for me to respond to people and to build kind of a small community that could that could help me answer the questions that kept coming back on YouTube, that I was, I always tried to reply to everybody, but it was becoming like a really big part of my day. And so my thought was that, hey, if I have a personal website where I can put all my all my YouTube videos on there, and maybe create some stuff that's a little bit more in depth and a little bit more polished, has a little bit more production value, maybe I can charge for it. Maybe some people will buy that, and it'll make all the time that I'm spending on this a little bit more worth it, maybe. And that all kind of worked as well. So I started to do that more and more. So it's slowly shifted from YouTube to that small business, that small website that essentially was just a personal website. And then my daughter was born, and so I think that kicked off a lot of stuff in my head. It was more like suddenly. And right around that time also was when the team kind of reshuffled, everybody coming in the company, and that's when I changed team too. So right about that time was when I realized that this super stable gig that I had, that I've had for the last 5 years or so was not that stable after all. And I could, I was on a visa back then, so I could essentially be deported if I lost my job. So
Jesus.
like, oh, I have a family here. That's not going to work out. And so the so the whole process really, it was kind of a slap in the face as to, this is super temporary unless I make it more stable and unless I have kind of a backup plan. And so the small business that was, QBrush back then, essentially evolved into something that's much bigger over time. I started to focus a lot more on that part of my life. And then beyond kind of me creating paid tutorials, it was really more like I was trying to get other people to contribute as well, so that it's not just me on the website. I felt that would be a more complete experience for users. And I was able to get a lot of really, really good artists on there because of, I had been working in the industry, so I had a lot of friends, and I could just ask them, hey, you want to do something for me? Come on, man, come on. And a lot of them said yes. But as we did more and more, it was starting to be really, really challenging to get anything out of people, or to get people to say yes. So they're like, well, especially top tier artists, right? And so those are the ones that I wanted to have produce content for us because they're, it's awesome. And they wouldn't. A lot of them said no because, I could probably do something on my own and make a lot more. I didn't have any money back then, really. So I couldn't possibly offer them something like what Noman Workshop, for example, would be able to offer them, right? So I couldn't compete with them, and I'm like, well, this is not going to work out. And so throughout kind of this process, for over a couple months, it really started to the plan really started to brew, and it was that's kind of what started it. So I couldn't get all the artists that I wanted. It was really frustrating. And so I'm like, well, screw that. Instead, I'm just going to, put all my savings into this new project where it's not going to be my personal website anymore. It's going to be this platform that's a little bit more like Etsy, but for digital artists. And so if somebody wants to open a store, I'm not going to chase after them. And they can just open one and do their own thing, manage their store like they want, and keep all the profits essentially. And we'll see where that goes. And that's what QBrush is today. So I guess it worked out, and then so it was a rough couple of years, but yeah, it's working out.
Yeah, man. Definitely. Definitely judging for your move in real estate, I think it's definitely been precious anyway. But yeah, it's great that it's working out, man. It's amazing to see you flourish from this great career you had in Blizzard, and then obviously working in through California is going to be difficult, and then you've made this new business that's just thrived, and it kind of seems like there's a lot of people now adjusting or making their websites vendor friendly, which I think is something that you've kind of kickstarted, especially within art and within tutorials. I mean, Gumroad was there to begin with, obviously, but I feel that sometimes has a stagnation because it's so hard to navigate, or it's hard to find things on it. But your weekly emails that go out every Monday, it's always awesome. You get the little Happy Monday email. Here's the top trending products. Here's what's available. It seems like it's great because you're keeping it in the public eye. You're rotating stuff. You're keeping what's fresh in the store. Definitely curating it, and I think curating it's really hard. It's the same thing I think that happened with the Apple Store when games kind of launched in the stratosphere, and there was so much content. The biggest problem they had was curation and trying to make sure that stuff that was in there was getting funneled to the top, and you could see the good things. So that's going to be a real issue for the store when it starts to blow up like that, right? Is the curation. Have you just been handling that yourself? Have you employed a team that kind of works through what's been filtered in the store, what's new, what's kind of trending?
Yeah, a lot of the reason why I chose to go this way was really because of obviously when you're looking to start a company, you're going to look at what's out there and how they're doing things and what could be improved. And really that was my also kind of, I guess I soaked that up from Blizzard, because that's really their thing, right? Where they pick a genre that they think can be improved, and then they make a really cool product that's better than everything out there, improving on all the issues that the other games had. And that's really kind of my approach for QBrush. It was there were Gumroad was kind of starting back then, but there was no sense of community, and it was essentially you're just having your own website. Really, that's what it was. And if you're not well connected as an artist, you're kind of screwed, right? So you don't have those connections. You can't push out your story, even if you share on social media and you don't have any friends. Nobody's going to see it. And so that was part of a problem I kind of noticed. And so the whole idea with QBrush was not only to have tutorials, but to have essentially anything, anything digital that's artistic that you want to share, that you want to sell, you can do that. And it's going to be in this community, this tight community where everybody is kind of pulled together. And that seemed to work a lot more for in my opinion. And that's kind of how it started. And the curated aspect of it was also a difficult decision, in the sense that it's a bad it's a decision that pays off on the long term, but short term, when you're starting a company, it's always bad to put the brakes on anything. And which really that's what it does, right? So when you have kind of a gate to get into a platform, there's always going to be a lot of people that just drop out, right? Because of there's something in my way, screw that, I'm going to do something else. And so that was a conscious decision at the beginning, and it was kind of a pretty big gamble too. But I figured that all the competitors that are out there, when it comes to their content, it's not so. There's always a lot of stuff that's just not good. Hold on, close the door. My family's coming back.
So raw these interviews are. There's live children running about.
All right, sorry about that.
It's fine.
But yeah, so the curated aspect of it really came from the competitors looking at what they have, and whenever they had those communities, there was so much stuff that you just have to filter through to find exactly what you want. And so yeah, the decision was I don't want that for the platform that I'm working on. I want everything on there to be top quality. So people that go on there, they don't waste time. They just search for a little bit and they'll find something that they love. And so yeah, it was a slower start. But kept on grinding, growing the team. So now we have 11 other people working on QBrush. So it's growing, and it's been awesome. So it's so much fun to see all the insane kind of content that comes in every day. One of my favorite things is just refreshing the recent products page to see what comes
up.
up.
The stuff that's coming in.
Yeah, it's just ridiculous. And so, but yeah, the main mission, for this whole thing was to allow artists that don't have that visibility to be as equally measured against other people on a platform. So this is really kind of trying to close the gap between their skills and the amount of money that they can make, and really try to remove or reduce the impact of popularity. So obviously not negatively, but make sure that the people that don't have it can still benefit a lot and hopefully be able to sell just as much.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I mean, it's the same kind of thing you find with ArtStation as well, where, Leonard and his team are obviously working hard to make sure that's obviously curated as well, but with trending as well, you kind of find that sometimes you can get lost amongst, the same top maybe 15, 20 artists that are posting stuff all the time. And yeah, like QBrush I do find is good. Every time I'm going on just to look at things, you can see things getting recycled and there is new content. You're not seeing the same things every time you go on the homepage, which is awesome. And, that kind of leads me into my next question of, QBrush was the first thing straight after Blizzard, but now you've launched the art school and, within QBrush, within your brand, obviously with you. So, again, what was the thinking behind that? Was that a thing where you looked at things where like Ash and Mache and were working on Learn Squared and other aspects of online schools? Was that something you wanted to kind of get into or see things that could be improved? Is that how the school came across?
The idea for the school was when I started it last year, I had been doing a lot of different tutorials and kind of just very similar to the business. They had been growing in scope. So at the beginning, I was doing like smaller tutorials, maybe 1 hour, maybe less, and then moved on maybe 2-3 hours, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then I was the last big course that I released before I started on art school was 45 hours, and it was on a 3D career, the ultimate guide for a 3D career, and so I was getting up there, and then I was just trying to look at my next challenge, right? So when it comes to tutorials, so I don't associate, all the tutorials that I create, they're from my store, right? So I'm just another seller like everybody else on QBrush, and I have my own little store, and that's why I'm producing content. But that's just something that I really love to do. And the idea for art school, it was kind of a culmination of a number of things, but mostly just trying to see what my next big project is, trying to identify, a big problem that people or that starting artists might have. And one of those was just access to art education and how kind of scattered all over the place it was, or how they had, how a lot of people had these really, deep preconceived notions about the options that are out there. And so I'm like, yeah, there has to be something that's a little bit better, that's cheaper, that's more affordable for people. And I looked around and there just wasn't. So it's kind of where everything started. I'm like, well, now the business is going well. I keep on hiring, and I don't have all this massive load that I had, in the first year and a half, 2 years. Anymore. So I have a little bit more time for myself. So maybe I can actually tackle this. And then that's kind of how I started, and been rolling with it ever since. It's been pretty crazy. Time-wise, super time-consuming, a lot of work, but it's been really fun, especially seeing, just the feedback from everybody. It's been super positive. So it's been fun.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like a thing where artists I've spoken to lately have been trying to rewire people's brains into that art schools don't have to cost a fortune. You can get a decent education for a reasonable price. I mean, we were just talking about this at IMAG in Paris because James Pack was there talking about his brainstorm school, and they were trying to obviously work a similar mission where they wanted to give higher, quality of education for film, game, cinematics, and concept without obviously charging the earth, which a lot of people assimilate to schools like Art Centre, which have the higher price tag. Without a scholarship, you're then paying a lot of money. And then again with your art school, it is probably one of the cheapest options compared to going to a physical school, and it also speaks to your education as well, because you were self-taught your whole life. You didn't kind of go to school for art. So yeah, it's one of these things I try to tell people when they talk about like picking an art school or going to an art school. I do say to people, that's great if you want to go to that environment, because there is benefits to going to a school, but you don't have to. You don't have to physically go to these schools and get qualifications. You can just teach yourself or learn online, because there is so many more options, even free options on YouTube now. So yeah, and I think, do you find, was that the similar trend with schools with you? Did you feel like there was another option when you started it?
Yeah, well, I mean, obviously, like I said, I'm a dropout, right? So I never had that big of an opinion on, or that good of an opinion of school in general. I just felt like it wasn't something that was for me. It didn't work out. That's not what I wanted to do. I knew from, and I'm lucky in that sense, but I knew from a very young age kind of the direction that I wanted with my life, and school was kind of steering me away from that in a sense, and. Yeah, so especially moving here to the United States, where all the schools are just ridiculously expensive. I'm from Canada, right? So the schooling system over there is pretty much free. But yeah, so coming here was a big part of it. So looking at all those top tier school, which charge you'll come out of here and you're lucky if you're not 200 grand in a hole. It was insane to me. So it was more of a that the way that I think about that is more, regardless of the quality of your education, even if you go to the best school and you learn the best things from the best teachers, the price that they charge will never make that a good value, will never make that a good option. And that's just price wise. So it's especially here in the States. And so that was really all it was. And I've asked so many times, different occasions, to different people, what their upbringing was like, and what kind of school they went into to end up as professional artists, and the ratio of people that actually attended school is quite low. And so yeah, that made me think that, all right, so obviously people are succeeding without it, so it's not 100% needed. It's way too expensive for the majority of people. Nobody can afford that unless your parents are really rich or unless you work 5 jobs. And yeah, that sucks. And I knew that it was doable for anyone to do that from home without having to attend school. And so with a little bit more guidance, essentially, this is really what I'm trying to offer with this, where it's you're learning on your own, yes, but there's also all the community aspect to it. There's the structure of a real school. There's the interaction with other students. We're doing live streams now, so it's kind of almost the same, minus kind of the the physical touch of having other students in there. But yeah. It's not a love story between me and traditional art schools. Let's just say that.
Yeah, I can imagine. And then, of course, once the kind of art school's been run up and running, you've also released the Ultimate Anatomy package, which kind of covers head and hands, main anatomy. Are these breakout lessons from the art school that you want to ship into separate packages, or is this an ongoing thing that you're trying to also do on top of the school?
Yeah, so the one thing that's interesting that not a lot of people know, obviously, but it's that the majority of the sales from the tutorials, if not all, pretty much all the sales from the tutorial, all the proceeds, they go back into QBrush. So as a company, I never went and asked for investor money. So it's 100% private. There's no outside investment that went into it, and it was all funded thanks to my tutorials, really. So I was kind of the main investor in the company, if you want. And so, the main reason why I started, or the main reason why I figured that art school would be a viable option, because prior to that, I had been releasing, tutorials kind of like on on a schedule, not really a schedule, but like often, throughout the year. And so I always had kind of this income coming in, being able to pay the salaries of my employees. And the reason why I figured that art school would be a viable option is that I could, with all the different classes that I work on, for the following year and a half, I won't be able to release individual tutorials, but with all the content that I'm creating in there and the diversity, I'll probably be able to package those into smaller bits and be able to sell those kind of individually. So it's almost like I'm working on like 20 tutorials at the same time. So I think of art school kind of like that. And so the anatomy package was exactly that, right? So it's all the classes for anatomy kind of packaged together, and really kind of the first try that I'm doing with this to see how it was going to work out, and and then so far it's actually working out pretty good. So that's encouraging, and it makes it all the more exciting to keep working on art school, because I know that we won't be struggling for money or anything like that. So.
Yeah. And it's interesting as well, because if you break those individual lessons into separate chunks, then it can be somebody who's like, well, I don't want to learn everything, but I do know that my perspective needs to be fixed, or I'm struggling with anatomy, so they can then, take those in. And then again, through those projects you've done with the school, and then with the anatomy packages, what's your kind of even like 6-month forecast for QBrush now? What's kind of the next thing that you're pursuing? Is it just mainly focusing on the art school and making sure that there's another term of that? Or are you thinking of any expansion or anything you're going to be pushing video-wise? Or
yeah, I mean, with art school, I'm definitely going to stop once I'm done with it. Right, once I wrap it up, I'll probably take a couple of days away from the computer completely, so I don't have to sit in my studio. But yeah, there's been a lot of working here in the studio, so I'll take a break from that. And the long term goal with the company, especially now that it's more stable, that there's no early business kind of stresses associated with it anymore. I can start to relax, after I'm done with art school. And what I'm planning is to just focus on my art a little bit more. So I'm going to kind of step back from working on tutorials for a little while. I'll probably do a couple more and keep working on the ones that I have, improving them, all that stuff, of course. But next year, I'm feeling it's going to be more focused on art and focused on the company, and not that I'm not right now, but focus on different aspects of the companies, try different things. So long term, the goal is to become essentially the one place whenever, if you're a starting artist and you want to find a job, or if you're a professional artist and you have you have a lot of expertise, or you have a lot of assets that you want to make a living out of, essentially, that's the goal. So to have a place where people can come in and build their career. And so this is it's obviously a big goal, but that's where we're going. We're going to have we're working on some pretty big features, some pretty big things to make that happen. And so for the following couple of years, it's just making sure that the platform is better, making sure that everything is better for the sellers, better for the customers, and so that everybody's happy. Take the feedback from everyone and just make a better product, so that we can get closer to that goal. So I'll be working on that for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, I can imagine. But then that's obviously the flip side of, you were an artist for so long, you worked within such a big company, and then you came up with your tutorials. And do you feel like having focused on the company so much, it's taken away from your individual art skill? Or is that something you want to then, so you want to be kind of churning that back out? And are you looking to be trying to take on work next year? Or, because I saw you recently a commission for sci-fi, was it, for San Diego Comic-Con?
So that never happened. It probably won't happen. It won't happen again anytime soon, if it happens. But no, I never take commissions normally. But that one was particularly interesting, and it came at just the right time. And for what they wanted, it was it was a good fit, right? So they didn't have much requirements. It was pretty open. There was no. They were like amazing clients, essentially the best kind of clients that you can have working freelance. That was that job. So I'm like, okay, I'll do this, especially now. So I had just been done with a big term for art school. So I had, a couple of days to kind of refresh and work on art. So that's why I did this. But Yeah, so moving forward, it's definitely going to be more about art. This is something that I've clearly been neglecting, in
Yeah.
the past 2.5, 3 years, which is essentially taking this company off the ground. So there's a lot of a lot of work that go into that, and not much time for anything else. And
Yeah.
so now that things are, the ball is rolling, I can finally start to be able to relax a little bit and focus back on what I really 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 love the most in life, art. And yeah,
Yeah.
so pretty excited about that.
Is that a thing that you will miss? Because I kind of saw on parts of your Facebook and stuff, or following Renard and stuff, that you were obviously posting pictures when you were leaving, and it was a kind of sad occasion. But is that something you feel that? I mean, you probably miss it. You miss working within a group of people that are so talented and so driven. Is that something you would want to revisit later down the line? You would maybe think about going back to
Never.
studio work? Never. Oh, there you go.
So,
Definitive answer. Like not even a second. Yeah.
there's no way in hell I'm going back to a studio. And it's more like if you experience at any point being your own boss, and I'm sure a lot of freelance artists, probably feel the same. It's more like and especially with having kids, I think that's the main part of it. I want to see my kids grow, and when I was working in video games, and it was we were being hit with crunch time back to back,
Yeah.
and it was really just like. Towards the end, I love Blizzard to death. I owe them so much for my career, for my life in general. That's even where I met my wife. So I owe them pretty much everything. But
Yeah.
yeah, the crunch part and the long hours I was putting at work, and of course at that time I still the company was starting, so there was that more time that I needed to spend at once I got home. So essentially, I just never saw my kids and grow up, and so I was that wasn't flying anymore. So that's why
I could imagine.
I gotta go.
Yeah,
And
that's it.
and yeah, it's been awesome, man. Like I love teamwork. And I kind of have that back now, that I have employees. So I have that dynamic, that dynamic back again. So I really, really enjoy that. But working on games and working with other artists that are super motivated, of course, I miss that a lot too. But it's more like the drive that I have for this company, and the potential that it has, and just all my team and as a whole, and how much fun we're having. I could never let that go.
Yeah, I mean, and that's also, I mean, I've always said that I'd never do it within an interview, because you always want to try and deliver the content that the viewers want to listen to, or something that people have asked me to ask you. But I think I'm only ever going to get this chance kind of once. Obviously I'll try and talk to you back and forward, but like one of my personal goals is to work at Blizzard one day, and probably not bashing the company, obviously, because they're a great company, but if you were trying to put a kind of reality check on someone wanting to work there, what would you say is the main thing you would give? Is it like advice? Like, it's not all playing video games and candy and whatever else. There is obviously work there, but what's the kind of the sobering experience you would find having to go and work in that company? If you were sitting outside, looking outside at the orc statues, thinking, "Oh my God, what an amazing place to work."
Yeah, I mean the like my outlook on video game work is still super super positive. So I, for most artists, I think working in a studio is probably going to be their best experience. For most artists, unless you have plans to start your own thing and stuff like that. But while I was working there, especially on the Titan team, it was just awesome, right? So I felt like I was in a dream. And for those 5 first years, just everything, the time passed by so quickly. But really, it comes down to your team. So really, that's the main glue, I guess, for me at least. So you can be at a really working on a really crap project. I'm not talking about Blizzard, but talking on working on a crap project, but have this amazing team behind it, and suddenly everything's okay, right? So, I guess that's one thing that I did not expect going into this kind of work. I always felt that the project was the most important, but after a couple of years, it's really more about how much fun you're having with your team, and it's a day-to-day thing. So really, it's it was never for me about shipping games, because for the majority of my career I didn't ship any games, so I kind of dropped that idea. That's not going to be a reward, so I'll try to find a reward somewhere else. And I really came with the team. But as far as Blizzard, for tips to go into Blizzard, the it's one big thing is going to be your love for games. So they're really, really big about that. They want employees that are also fans. They want people that are super motivated about their games, that are excited about their own personal growth, that are excited to work in a team, other amazing artists. Sorry about that. And so as long as you can show that you're that you're really, really motivated, that you're really interested in that job, and of course that you're making a ton of progress, right? Just improving a lot, working towards that goal, then usually Blizzard is really, really receptive to that, and they tend to follow those artists a little bit more closely. And so, yeah, man, it's for anybody else out there, that have a company in mind, a studio in mind, it's really all about working towards their art style. So there's I did a lot of interviews in my time there, and the one thing that always struck me as being very, very strange from applicants was that their portfolio had nothing to do with Blizzard. When they apply, it might be super good, right? So it might be some like they're coming from Ubisoft, working on like Tom Clancy game or something like that, and it's all hyper realistic, kind of grayscale almost. It has nothing to do at all with the Blizzard style. And even though your art is obviously super good, that's not going to work out, right? There's no direct connection between the two. And so it's really, that's the other part. So making sure that your portfolio is geared, or that making sure that your portfolio screams Blizzard. And that has, like the majority of applicants that we did take in, their portfolio really seemed like they had been working at Blizzard already. So all the art was Blizzard flavored, fan art of Blizzard characters, stuff like that. So that's a big part of what the company is looking for.
Yeah, I was going to say that it would obviously harken back to things like Jamaro Kindred, who obviously has an amazing story of how he got into Blizzard. But yeah, the I want to work for Blizzard website, which you would look on that website and say, oh yeah, that looks like something from Warcraft, or that looks like something from Hearthstone, and that's pretty much which is funny though, because across here in Scotland, we have Rockstar North, who work on the Grand Theft Auto series, and one of the guys who worked there said to me that they would get the opposite, right? So they make games based in cities with cars and real people, but they would get people submitting applications with orcs with armor and shields and fantasy paintings, and he was like, this looks nothing like our games.
Yeah.
Like, so yeah, and it's crazy to think, it seems like the most obvious thing, but yeah, tailoring your portfolio towards the studio is something that I try to tell people time and time again, is that it is one of the key things, because they need to look at your portfolio, right, and say, well, this belongs in our studio, we can see this working. Whereas if you've got to imagine it almost and look at the Tom Clancy stuff, then it is harder to get that kind of vibe. So yeah, definitely one of the biggest pieces of advice. I mean, you can teach technical skill, but the stylized stuff is harder. And I almost feel that, because I'm obviously trying to learn that myself, is that I'm doing my anatomy studies, and the exaggerated proportions of a lot of the Blizzard stuff, I think, is almost a harder technical skill to master than the realistic stuff. Is that how you feel as well when you were drawing, or?
I actually was never interested in realistic stuff, so I felt like to me it always felt like and not to bash photography, but I don't really see the point, of trying to copy something that exists but in a better version in life. And so, yeah, my thing was always, like fantasy stuff, things that don't exist. That's always really what drove me as an artist. So I never really explored anything that's too realistic. Yeah, it's just, a lot of people love that. They really love to be able to recreate something and be like, this is 3D, but it doesn't look like it. And I guess that's cool, but not for me.
Yeah, no, I can imagine that as well, because a whole thing where I struggled as well when I first got in the industry was trying to copy or emulate realistic stuff, because I thought that's what would get me a job. But then I knew I wasn't staying true to myself, because when I initially left my job when I was 28, 27, I actually loved anime, I loved manga, I loved comic books. So that was kind of wanting to be my career when I left. But then I found out how little comic artists actually make sometimes. So I tried to shift to games. And then I tried to make myself more and more realistic, thinking about work. But then again, I wasn't kind of staying true to what I loved, which was big proportions, comic book characters. And then when I kind of changed my style and wanted to go more stylized and more Blizzard-like, I was watching Arnold's talk at GDC, and he talked about how before he worked in Overwatch, he was working for Udon doing Street Fighter comics. And then it also harkened to people like Joe Mad, who I loved as well, Jim Lee. So, yeah, it was almost like, a full circle of I've came back to doing what I wanted to do originally. And I just love that exaggerated realism, especially Joe Mad. I mean, I'm going to THU this year, and Joe Mad's doing a talk there, which is going to be like mind blown for me. I can't believe I'm getting to actually be in the same room as the guy. But his artwork, I mean, he's been working for Marvel since he was 17, and his stuff is just, I mean, Battle Chasers especially recently has just blown my mind. That game, it's just the art style is incredible. But that's something I think that you've got to do is stay true to your artwork. And if you're trying to force that, if you're trying to force the Blizzard style, you can almost tell as an art director or as someone who's trying to hire that it's not something that people are doing out of love, right? They're just doing it because they want the job.
In the interviews, it always shows, if you're really into it, and I mean, yeah, of course you have to have the portfolio to match it, but this is something that people can snuff out. It's pretty obvious usually.
Yeah, definitely. And then like again, it's a thing that I think you've got to want to do for fun. It's one of these things you need to be doing every day. And I mean, is it apart from the kind of the side of I'm trying to think the side where you're saying that the people were coming in for applications and their stuff wasn't matching the style, was there anything even with people who had the style, was there something else you found that was lacking in portfolios for students or people trying to apply for Blizzard? Was it like they just weren't paying enough attention to anatomy, or there was too much? I mean, somebody said the other day that they hated fan art in portfolios. Was there anything that kind of stuck out to you apart from the style?
Yes, yeah. There's definitely a couple of red flags, that always come up, and they're always very telling of the of where the interview is going, whether that's going to be a positive thing or not. And those are so of course the style, that's one thing. The content of the portfolio, that's the subject of the artworks in it, but the having technical shots, especially if you're applying as a 3D artist, the guys working at Blizzard, they're obviously very talented artistically, but also technically, and they want to see that stuff. And there's been so many applicants that come in with beautiful portfolios, but there's no construction shots anywhere. We don't see the UVs, we don't see the topology, and so it's almost like pointless at that. If that's your presentation, if you have nothing else to show, that never works out. So you need to have those more technical shots to show that the technical side of the work is actually there as well as the at the artistic side. And then the other part is just your personality, really. If you have to, if you come off as as cocky, or if you're obviously just behave well, like a normal person, but there's a big emphasis put on the culture of Blizzard and how people fit in. And so you really have to, you have to be easygoing. You have to love working with a group, and you have to click with the team. And sometimes maybe that's a bad decision because you might skip on really talented artists that, that just didn't have that connection with the team, with the art team. Yeah. Mm-hmm. But that's still kind of a big element there. And so,
I was going to say, for communication and teamwork, you almost have to talk to people. I know some artists can be very introvert, which is totally fine, but then it's like, well, maybe freelance is maybe something you want to look at as opposed to coming into a studio, because yourself, daily stand-ups, meetings, catch-ups, milestones, it's all stuff where you have to be openly communicative of your whole team, of your progress, what needs to be done next, what's done. That's
an interesting point, actually, because you're right. So the majority of artists are introverts, and that's just it makes it easier to be an artist if you're an introvert, because you can be on your own for long periods of time, and not miss kind of the human connection too much, and be able to really develop your skill in like this bubble. But when working in game companies, they're kind of requiring something that's pretty different from that. Working in a team, accepting feedback from other people, dealing with other people that you might not agree with, and my phone keeps ringing. And so yeah, a lot. It's something that you have to really, of course, be aware of when going into games. It's you'll have to kind of break out of your shell, and the sooner the better. So getting into those communities, those art communities online, that kind of stuff, really helps to put yourself out there, because that's what's going to be expected of you at a studio job.
Yeah, and I found obviously one of the best things I found for just getting me out of my shell and meeting new people was going to events. Like 2 years ago, I went to Industry Workshops in London. I've been to IMAG, Playgrounds, and then obviously I'm going to THU this year. So these events are great for just, even the guy I used to host the podcast with, he went to Edge Control in Canada, and they have similar meets. So yeah, it's a good way for people to get in communities and meet artists, because especially when I went to Industry Workshops the first year, I was meeting people from Ubisoft, from EA, that I never knew they worked at these companies and these big speakers, but they have so much time and so much to give back. They want to talk to students, they want to talk to younger people or people up and coming, and give that back to feed out, look at portfolios, give reviews, and always constructive criticism. And almost the hardest part I think of a lot of this industry is developing a thick skin, because it's almost soul crushing when somebody tells you that painting you spent 5 hours on or 6 hours on could really be improved if you just move the light source or shaded better, because you're so precious about it. So yeah. And then
No, go for it.
No, on you go, Mark. On you go.
I was just gonna say the feedback part. That's one thing that I guess one of the hardest thing to adjust as an artist. Especially if you've been working on your own and in your little bubble. For the majority of your upbringing, and then you land into this team that expects different things from you, and they might have a completely different vision than yours, and your vision essentially it matters a little bit, but not really. You got to listen to your art director, and you gotta go the same path the team is going, and so that takes a while. And I think a big part of being a professional artist is really that, being able to take that feedback in and turn it into something positive, put that maybe that frustration or that energy back into the drawing, and essentially really improve it, because usually those are always improvements.
Yeah, no, I can imagine. And it's one thing that it's took me a while to work on, but it is something I still see people struggling with, is taking that feedback at portfolio reviews, or if you're going to a company and they're looking through your stuff and saying, well, this is great, but you could change this, and then they're coming away like, oh God, I can't believe I'm so stupid, I should have known. But yeah, it's all a learning experience, and you really have to build up that battle armor.
What you're saying with the feedback though, and getting that feedback, I mean, that's so important, right? It's one of the most important things, and this is a lot easier if you're part of an art community, and that can be like a forums, it can be a Facebook group, it can be whatever, maybe some locals or something like that. But being part of that community, being part of the art community is so important, and so many artists just are not aware of that. And the majority of people that are hired for games are people that are part of that community, people that interact with other artists. They might give feedback to different artists. They might try to help, and then as a result, other people help you. Other people see you. They might share your stuff more, and you just end up having that much more exposure. And all of that is just so important. It's always motivating for companies to see an artist over a couple of years and see how much they grow, right? So even though you might not get an answer from a company, or even though you might think that they're not watching, they most likely are. If you're making noise in the community, and so it's just a matter of time from then. Just for people that are in the same situation, it's all about keep on working hard, keep on showing that you're progressing, and you might get that call too eventually.
Yeah, definitely. That's always the thing I talk about with people when I try to bug people to come on my podcast, is always follow the 3 Ps, right? So you be polite, persistent, and patient.
There you go.
Yeah, definitely, 100%. Because it played off with getting Mark on the podcast anyway.
Sure did. See, yeah. Proof it works.
Yeah, 100%. So definitely, Mark. I know you're obviously super busy because, of course, you're running an empire. So I'll let you go. But just quickly to say thank you for coming on and giving up your time. It's been an absolute honor and a pleasure speaking to you.
Oh man, thanks so much for having me. And again, thanks for persisting. I'm glad I was on. It means a lot that you kept on trying, and I'm flattered and honored to be here as well.
Yeah, that's great, man. Thank you very much. Yeah, I'll post all of Marc's links for his own portfolio and for CubeBrush. And if anything else that Marc wants to highlight, I'll definitely add it below. But go check out CubeBrush. It's a great resource for digital artists, for tutorials or assets. Of course, yeah, definitely stay tuned to the podcast. We always want to hear back. If anybody has any questions for Marc, you can leave them in the comments. I'll try and forward them on to him, and we might even, down the line when Marc has some more free time, although that might not be for a while, try and come back and do a Q&A or something like that, or try and respond to them. Yeah, definitely. So yeah, again, thanks to Marc for coming on. Thanks to you guys for listening. It's been an absolute pleasure. And yeah, check us out on iTunes, on YouTube, Spotify, and SoundCloud. Give us some ratings and likes. Make sure to subscribe. We are only 10 subscribers away from 1,000. Please, God, please subscribe to the channel, because I want to hit that 1,000 mark. It's been like that for a couple of months, and yeah, I just want to hit that round number. It'll just satisfy my OCD. So thanks, guys, and I'll see you all later.